Hello, my name is Brittany Wheely, and I am the Youth and Community Outreach Specialist for Join Together Northern Nevada. Join Together Northern Nevada is a substance abuse prevention coalition, so we partner with a lot of different agencies to promote a healthy and drug-free community. Today's presentation, we're going to be covering vaping and e-cigarettes. So to get us started, I have a brief video. It will give us kind of an overview of e-cigarettes and how it affects our brain and our body. And then the rest of our presentation will kind of really unpack and dig into some of that information a little bit deeper.
E-cigarettes, or vapes, are battery-operated devices that produce vapor instead of smoke. And instead of being packed with tobacco, they have cartridges filled with a liquid that contains flavorings and nicotine. Vapes haven't gone through a health and safety review yet, but that hasn't stopped big companies from making all sorts of unfounded claims and tempting you to try them. Meanwhile, the science is in. Researchers have found harmful ingredients in vapes, including ultrafine particles that can damage the lungs, oils and flavorings that are linked to serious lung disease, volatile organic compounds like benzene, which is found in car exhaust, and poisonous metals like nickel, tin, and lead. And then there's nicotine, which is extremely addictive and especially bad for young people because of the way the brain works. Our brains grow rapidly until we reach our mid-20s. And using nicotine while it's still developing can disturb this process and increase our risk for addiction and mental health issues later in life. This is because nicotine affects synapse formation in the parts of the brain that control attention and learning, which can lead to memory issues, mood disorders, and lower impulse control permanently. Kids who use nicotine in middle and high school are more likely to use cigarettes and other drugs in the future. Young people who vape are 4 times more likely to go on to smoke cigarettes than those who don't, and juuling delivers way more nicotine than smoking. A single Juul pod is equivalent to 20 cigarettes, which makes all of these risks even more dramatic. It could take years before we fully understand how vaping affects our health. It took 120 years for researchers to show how dangerous cigarettes are. But what experts already know should stop us in our tracks. Get ahead of history. Protect your brain.
Okay, so that video was produced by the Addiction Policy Forum. So if anyone's looking for more information about the content that we're covering today that we maybe didn't quite talk about in our presentation, definitely check them out. It's a really great resource for more information on addiction and vaping and e-cigarettes. So it's important to know when we're talking about e-cigarettes, no matter what you call it, it's an e-cigarette. There have been a lot of different generations of e-cigarettes, but they all really work the same way. And they consist of a battery heating element and a chamber that holds the e-liquid. So e-cigarette products produce an aerosol by heating a liquid that usually contains nicotine, flavorings, and other chemicals to help make up that aerosol. So again, it's not a vape that's coming out of this device, it's an aerosol. And we'll dig into what chemicals can be found in that aerosols that are contained in these devices. We've seen a lot of different generations of e-cigarettes, whether it's from the tanks and mods to rechargeable e-cigarettes like the Juul and the Soren. We're also now starting to see more disposable e-cigarettes like the puff bars. But again, no matter what you call it, it's an e-cigarette. Almost all of these e-cigarettes have nicotine in them, as well as other harmful chemicals. So let's talk a little bit more about nicotine. So nicotine is a drug found in tobacco plants. It's also frequently used in insecticides to kill bugs. So think about that if you see someone hanging out with your friends, puffing on an e-cigarette. What's in that e-cigarette device is an insecticide, which is intended to cause harm and kill a living organism. Also, you should know that nicotine is the drug found in tobacco products that make them addictive. So that means that once you use it, your body will continue to want it more and more. When you use e-cigarettes, nicotine is quickly absorbed into your body and goes directly to your brain. Nicotine activates the areas of the brain that make you feel satisfied and happy. And putting nicotine in your body is dangerously addictive, and it can also prime your brain for addiction to other tobacco products or even harder drugs like cocaine. So I've told you a little bit about what nicotine is, but there are different types of nicotine. So this is the pH scale on the screen here, which measures what chemicals are in liquids, such as in a swimming pool or a hot tub. So the reason why I'm showing you this is that pH matters when it comes to how harsh nicotine is on your body, particularly on your throat when you're inhaling it. Most nicotine in cigarettes and e-cigarettes is what we can call free-base nicotine, which means it's very blue on the pH scale. The more blue on the scale means the more volatile or crazy it's going to be, which means that it's going to be more harsh on your throat. But manufacturers of Juul have found a way around this harshness factor and added a chemical to the nicotine which causes it to become more red on the pH scale. By making it more red, it then becomes what we call nicotine salts rather than free-base nicotine. Nicotine salts are less harsh on your throat, which is particularly concerning for young people because it allows for the nicotine to be used more easily, which increases the likelihood of trying an e-cigarette and getting hooked on it. So here's an example of how that might look. When someone uses a cigarette, which is the free-base nicotine, the throat hit or irritation on the throat is the body's way of saying, hey, this air doesn't feel normal in my throat. I should not be breathing this. Cigarette users have become tolerant of this feeling over time and even associate it with receiving a hit of nicotine. Juul Labs claims that it's designed to the Juul for adults who want to quit smoking cigarettes. But if that's the case, wouldn't they want their device to irritate the throat since smokers associate with bringing nicotine into their body? So let's just say that we're interested in attracting a new non-smoker consumer, aka young people like you. They simply studied how cigarette companies spent decades manipulating nicotine to maintain addiction. In other words, this reduced harshness on the throat has allowed Juul to deliver more nicotine to young people without their bodies rejecting it as easily. The flavors also make it seem friendly to young people, and the attractive design can make it seem non-threatening. So all disposable e-cigarettes and pods have extremely high amounts of nicotine. So all of these disposable e-cigarettes and pods have an extremely high amount of nicotine. I say that twice because it's especially important for you to remember that. I often have teens try and tell me that they use e-cigarettes that don't have nicotine in them, but 99% of e-cigarettes have nicotine in them, and all of these disposable pods and e-cigarette devices have nicotine. So there's no way you can get a disposable pod or disposable e-cigarette that does not have nicotine in it. So if you didn't know, a standard pack has 20 cigarettes in it. And there's 1 milligram of nicotine absorption per cigarette. So that's about 20 milligrams of nicotine delivered to the body from one entire pack of cigarettes. Unlike other e-juices, which may or may not contain nicotine, all salt-based e-juice contains nicotine. According to Juul Labs, 1 Juul pod contains 41.3 milligrams of nicotine. This is equal to the amount of nicotine you'd find in about 40 cigarettes. So that's what that little squiggly equal sign is the approximation or the about 41 cigarettes. So if we were talking about comparing Juul pods to cigarettes, the number of cigarettes a Juul pod actually does have in it is about equal to 2 packs of cigarettes. So if someone is using an entire Juul pod over the course of 2 to 3 days, they're using the equivalent amount of nicotine of 2 packs of cigarettes. So as mentioned before, this is an extremely high amount of nicotine and can be intense for first-time users. Our concern is that young people are being introduced to a high amount of nicotine and developing a tolerance quickly and becoming addicted as a result. So because it's easy to use and it has so much nicotine in it, people are getting addicted at a higher rate than if they were trying cigarettes for the first time. So let's take a look at puff bars. 1 puff bar contains about 50 milligrams of nicotine, which is equivalent to 50 cigarettes. So if we're comparing e-cigarettes or this puff bar to a pack of regular cigarettes, that's about 2.5 packs of cigarettes in this one little device. 1 Soren Vagon cartridge contains about 90 milligrams of nicotine or 90 cigarettes. So again, if we're comparing this pod to the number of cigarettes, that's about 90 cigarettes, which is about 4.5 packs of cigarettes. So no matter what pod-based device you're using or disposable e-cigarette you're using, all of them contain really high levels of nicotine, which is extremely addictive, and that's what keeps people coming back for more of these devices. With these really high doses of nicotine, we're also seeing more and more cases of what has become known as nic sick, or people are getting sick because they're having too much nicotine in their system. Here are some of the symptoms of that sickness: are nausea and vomiting, stomach ache and loss of appetite, increased heart rate and blood pressure, headache, mouth watering, quick, heavy breathing, dizziness or tremors, or confusion or anxiety. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention warns that 50 to 60 milligrams of nicotine is a deadly dose for an adult who weighs about 150 pounds. Traditionally, someone who smoked would absorb 1 milligram of nicotine per cigarette. And this is why overdosing has become common, is because we're seeing kids that are using these e-cigarettes more frequently than they would be using regular cigarettes. Vaping, however, has definitely changed that game. Because one Juul pod contains as much nicotine as we saw in that previous slide as 1.5 packs of cigarettes, there is really nothing stopping Juul or any other manufacturer from increasing the level of nicotine in their devices. And we kind of saw that when we were comparing the e-cigarettes in the previous slide. So we have Juul that has right around 50 to 60 milligrams of e-cigarettes, and then we saw that it started to increase as we looked at the puff bars and then the Soren Bacon cartridge.
Awkwardness, I see no difference. Okay, fine. Okay, so you go up to him and you say hello.
We can do something easier, like a third of 33.
No, you don't. Got that. No. Yes!
There are solids, liquids, gases, plasma. Blinds, please. Now, states of matter are comprised of...
Come on, honey, dinner.
Come on,
Headphones, please.
Headphones, buddy.
Headphones. Come on.
What? Hey!
Oh my.
Oh, okay, that's good. What kind of meeting? What were you doing?
It was fine. I don't really want to talk about it.
You never want to talk about it, Trey.
I said I don't want to talk about it.
Wait, Trey, what are you doing?
Just get out!
What is going on with you?
Get out!
Listen to me.
Get out of my room!
Andy!
Get out of my room, okay?
No, I will not get out.
Get out! Get out!
I want to talk to
Just
you.
get out, okay?
Trey, come on.
What?
Let's get back in the car. Let's talk.
I don't want to talk about it.
That is not
Please,
okay.
get out!
No.
Lie!
I'm not lying. I didn't say anything. Yes, you did. No, you didn't. I didn't say anything. I hate this! Stop it!
It's a relationship between molecules, Danny.
What's going on? Open the door.
Okay, so I know that video showed a lot of extreme cases of how nicotine can affect your behavior, but maybe take a pause and think about this video. If you or someone you know has been vaping, do you notice them getting into more fights with their parents, having more issues with their family? Maybe having a harder time concentrating in school because they're just not entirely able to focus as much as they were before. They're feeling irritable, or they're more easily annoyed. Maybe they have more feelings of anxiety. So these could be signs about nicotine affecting someone's brain. And so we'll kind of dig into that a little bit deeper in this next slide. So right now, important growth is happening in your brain that will continue to happen until you're about 25 years old. The brain is the last organ in the human body to develop fully, so exposing your brain to nicotine while it's in this important developmental phase can cause addiction and harm your brain. So if you're wondering why that is, you can kind of think about it like this. Each time a new memory is created or a new skill is learned, stronger connections are built between brain cells. Nicotine changes the way these connections or synapses are formed, which can harm the parts of the brain that control attention and learning. Although adults may use nicotine products if they're trying to quit using regular e-cigarettes, for youth, young people like you, any exposure to nicotine is unsafe. And because addiction is a form of learning, young people can get addicted more easily than adults. So just like if you've ever heard someone say that a young person can learn a new language or learn to play an instrument a lot easier than it is for someone that's older, addiction works kind of the same way. The nicotine in e-cigarettes and other tobacco products can also prime your brain for addiction to other drugs, such as cocaine. And here I have another video that just kind of demonstrates how nicotine, and in this one I think they talk mostly about alcohol, but the same is true for nicotine and how it can really work its way into your brain and become a permanent fixture.
It's important to understand that everyone in the world has addictions, or rather natural addictions, to things that are good, like food, water, and sleep. These natural addictions are important for our health and survival, and without them, we would not hunger or crave the things we need to survive. Now, we aren't exactly born with these natural addictions. Our body creates them. Let's look at an example. When you bite into an apple, your brain says, "Yum." Your brain recognizes that this apple is good for you. It has nutrition, vitamins, and gives your body the energy it needs to survive. Whenever the brain recognizes something that's good, it releases a chemical called dopamine. Dopamine causes you to experience pleasure. It's what makes you feel good, like when biting into an apple. The brain releases this dopamine in order to teach the body that this is healthy and good for your survival, and that it should remember to do it again. Now, there are other things we do that can release the pleasurable dopamine, like playing video games, exercising, or reading a good book. However, the amount of dopamine released during these activities is less than what's released when we eat food. The brain does this so it can recognize which is more important. So if you go 2 days without reading a book, or 2 days without eating food, your body is going to crave the food over the book. As such, your brain creates what's called a hierarchy of survival, which ranks how important each of these things is to your survival. Now, there are some things that will not cause the release of dopamine, like eating soap or punching yourself in the face. The brain knows that these things are not good, and therefore does not release the pleasurable dopamine because your brain does not want you to do it again. Now, let's look at alcohol, marijuana, tobacco, and other drugs. These are all classified carcinogens, proven to cause cancer and other fatal diseases. Now, your brain should recognize that these things are harmful to your body. However, these substances have special chemical characteristics that fool the brain into releasing dopamine, oftentimes in much greater amounts than the body has ever experienced before. Because of this, the body is fooled into thinking that these things are good and important, sometimes even more important than food, water, or sleep, and consequently hijacks the #1 spot in your survival hierarchy. So now, if you go 2 days without eating or 2 days without drinking alcohol, your body will actually crave the alcohol over the food. This is an extreme case of addiction, where the person addicted believes that they will die if they don't get it. The severity of the addiction depends on where the alcohol or drug lies within your hierarchy of survival, and can increase even with casual use. Research shows that people under the age of 21 are at the highest risk of having their survival hierarchy hijacked. Why? Because their brains are still growing and developing and are hypersensitive to false shocks of dopamine caused by these harmful substances. By 21, the brain is more fully developed and mature, and the survival hierarchy becomes more permanent and less susceptible to getting hijacked. The flip side is that once you are 21, it becomes very difficult to remove these harmful substances from your survival hierarchy. Studies show that 9 out of 10 people who currently struggle with addiction started drinking, smoking, or using before the age of 21. Understanding addiction as a preventable disease can help save millions of lives. The decision to wait until 21 could mean the difference between a life enslaved by addiction or a life full of success and accomplishment. Want to learn more? Visit us at wait21.org.
Okay. So there's a lot of things that are happening to your body when someone is vaping. E-cigarettes have not been around for a long time, but we are seeing some research on the short-term effects on a person's health. So as a review, nicotine negatively affects and impacts your brain, turning it against you by hijacking that reward pathway. So we saw that really illustrated in our previous video, where they were talking about how nicotine kind of hijacks our hierarchy of needs and inserts itself. So it makes us feel that nicotine is important for us to survive. And that's what kind of leads us to that path of addiction, because we're using it and reusing it all the time because it's telling our brain that we absolutely need to have it. Using nicotine can also make your heart beat faster because it activates your fight or flight response. And the aerosol damages specific cells in your circulatory system, including your risk for heart disease. Nicotine salt e-liquids produce a faster heart rate than other non-nicotine salt like e-liquids. The nicotine on its own can cause trouble breathing and damage to the lungs, and your lungs are not designed to have anything else in them besides oxygen. They can't break down all of these chemicals that are in the e-cigarette aerosol that get inhaled directly into your lungs. The lung damage caused by e-cigarette aerosol increases chances for lung injury and lung disease. Nicotine can also cause acid reflux disease. And last but not least, nicotine can even negatively impact your reproductive organs. So e-cigarette use affects the brain and body so dramatically because e-cigarette aerosol is not just harmless water vapor. Again, like we talked about before, the what's coming out of that device, actually, it's called vape, but that's a little bit misleading because that's not actually vapor. The tobacco industry prefers that term vapor because it implies that it's harmless, but it's really not harmless. Besides nicotine, e-cigarette aerosol can contain cancer-causing chemicals, heavy metals, and ultrafine particles that can be inhaled deeply into the lungs and cause harm for your body. So all of these chemicals that are spilling into the slide right now have been found in e-cigarette and pod-based aerosol. The ones that are going to be showing up in orange are known to be harmful, which has been determined by the Food and Drug Administration. And while we did not know this at first, many of these are the same chemicals found in traditional cigarettes. So simply put, e-cigarettes produce an aerosol that often causes many harmful chemicals and toxins, some known to cause cancer. Nicotine itself is a highly addictive compound, and while not all contain nicotine, all have many of these chemicals and toxins. So there are many reasons why young people start using these devices, such as the flavors, the changing social norms. So before, we've all heard that cigarettes are bad for us, but with this new product, we didn't quite hear that early enough. We're also seeing people using e-cigarettes because they're feeling stressed. There's a perceived reduced risk. So a lot of times people say that they use these devices because they're safer than regular cigarettes. Well, we kind of know from the research there that that's not exactly the case. There's also been really great effort put into marketing these cigarettes to make them look appealing. And there's also been a lack of education on addiction and how addictions are formed, especially for young people. So the e-cigarette industry is very smart and in their approach, and they focus on these 3 points to push their agenda to attract young consumers. So their big focus is on flavors, those changing social norms of kind of becoming the new product, and marketing. And they're doing this because they're looking to replace the old generation of cigarette users. Those cigarette users are again, becoming, old and ill because these cigarettes have caused some harm to them, whether it's through lung disease, heart disease. So they're looking for a new ideal customer. And what that new ideal customer looks like is young people your age, young people just like you. So the e-cigarette and vape pen industry sees young people as the perfect replacement customers for those old cigarette users. They know that if young people get hooked to their product early in life, they'll have them as customers for years to come. And it's well known by health professionals and the e-cigarette tobacco industry alike that many current smokers started smoking before adulthood. So if you take a closer look at the e-cigarette and vape pen marketing, you'll notice the industry's attempts to make e-cigarette and vape pens trendy and appealing to young people. We're going to take a look at some actual quotes from the tobacco industry that shows how they really see people that are your age. So here's one. It's today's teenager is tomorrow's potential regular customer, and the overwhelming majority of smokers first begin to smoke while they're in their teens. At least a part of the success of Marlboro Red during its most rapid growth period was because it became the brand of choice among teenagers who then stuck with it as they grew older. Next, we have the ability to attract new smokers and develop them into young adult franchise is key to brand development. They represent tomorrow's cigarette business. As this 14 to 24 age group matures, they will account for a key share in the total of cigarette volume for at least the next 24 to 5 years. So think about how that makes you feel. You as a person who is in this kind of 14 to 24 age group. How does that make you feel knowing that these companies are targeting you specifically? Because they know that if you get addicted at this young age, you'll be a customer forever.
Seems like vape flavors are less about helping people quit and more about getting a new generation hooked on nicotine. How sweet. 81% of youth who have ever used e-cigs started with flavors.
So the story behind e-cigarettes and why they were first invented was to help people quit smoking regular cigarettes. And as you can see, there's probably a problem with that whole scenario, especially if one's whole business is centered around getting people to smoke or use these products forever, and getting them addicted to it so they use them for the rest of their life. So we are seeing these e-cigarettes that are coming out with a lot of different flavors, and those flavors are attracting a younger market for sure. So earlier we discussed how these, or in that previous video, we discussed how these vape devices have fruity and sweet flavors as long as these interesting colors. Think about it to yourself. Why would there be over 15,000 e-juice flavor options with things like banana butt and honey doo-doo? It's important to be aware that this is another example of these e-cigarette companies following this well-known advertising strategies of the big tobacco playbook. Again, we want to attract, their whole philosophy is to attract these younger users so that way they can have users for the rest of their life. This tactic is so effective that flavored cigarettes have been banned since 2009, since extensive research shows that they are more appealing to young people. The pod-based companies, along with the other e-cigarettes, have yet to be regulated in this way. But more and more evidence is piling up, proving that these flavors are dangerous in and of themselves. So far, we know that flavors can impair lung function and increase the risk for heart disease. But pod-based companies continue to use them because they know it makes their products seem appealing and safe to teenagers. These e-cigarette companies are also spending lots of money to advertise their product and get it in your face all the time. So did you know that $9.5 billion is spent every year on tobacco and e-cigarette advertising, which is more than $26 million every day, or more than $1 million every single hour? Or if you want to break it down even further, that's about $29 per person that lives in the United States, including adults and children. So a lot of money is thrown around to be spent on advertising to get this product in your face and hopefully in your hands. In 2016, 4 in 5 US middle and high school students were exposed to an e-cigarette advertisement. More than 1 in 2 middle school and high school youth were exposed to an e-cigarette ads in retail stores, and nearly 2 in 5 middle and high school students saw an e-cigarette ad online. And scientists are also finding that youth who are exposed to e-cigarette advertisements are more likely to use this product than youth who are not exposed. So let's take a look at some of these advertisements and these marketing tactics that they're using. So when we're looking at this advertisement, we can really tell that this is attracting a younger user. And we can tell that because this model or this woman in this advertisement has a really youthful appearance. She has like a high ponytail, which is a pretty youthful hairstyle. She's wearing a Letterman jacket or Letterman style jacket, which is, typically only people in high school wear jackets like that. And then she also has like an interesting position for her body. So she's definitely posing for this photograph. It's not just like her doing, grocery shopping or things like that. She's definitely trying to be stylized and look kind of high fashion in this photo. Here are some another campaign of different ads from the company called Blue. And we can see here that they're definitely promoting these e-cigarette devices by making the ads have models that have, look cool. They're definitely expressing their femininity or masculinity. They're displaying a social message of just like, this is what you've been waiting for. They have this like city backdrop to show that, this is kind of what everyone's doing and it's kind of a cool vibe. And that this device is also being held a little bit differently than the other device. So it's kind of promoting itself as this is the different cool device. They even have here just like a really quick short little tagline that says click, vape, repeat. Just kind of, again, really playing to that more youthful audience. None of the models in these advertisements are older looking. Nobody looks like they're in their 30s or older. They all are very young and youthful in appearance. There's also been increasing concerns around how young people have been targeted by these e-cigarette companies on social media. For example, young social media influencers and other third-party influencers were paid by Juul Labs and other vaping companies to make vaping look cool. Here's a comment from one social media influencer who Juul Labs paid to promote their product to young people. After Juul stopped paying influencers to post their content, they promoted the device on social media in other ways, including commenting on people's posts and sharing discount codes. Even after Juul shut down its Instagram page, they still have an active account that is being tagged in posts daily. Many social media accounts post videos of young people using these products while giving shout outs to Juul and other e-cigarette brands. So posts like this one. A Stanford study recently showed that teens who see a lot of posts on social media about vaping are more likely to vape and have positive opinions on vaping in general. So keeping that in mind, when you're scrolling through your Instagram or on Snapchat, you can choose what kind of content that you see on there. So if you're seeing a lot of things about vaping and you're trying to live a lifestyle away from vaping, definitely unfollow when you can. And don't let these e-cigarette industries use you to collect a paycheck, because really their whole business model relies on you, a young consumer, as a teenager, getting addicted to these e-cigarette devices. So don't let them use you and don't let them profit off of an addiction that they are trying to push onto you. So again, it's important to say no when it comes to using these e-cigarette devices, and that choice is ultimately yours to make. But here are some ways that you can kind of say no to these devices if you're in a situation where it comes up. Because we know that saying no to family and friends is not always easy. But remember, if they truly respect and care for you, they will respect your decision, even if it doesn't necessarily line up with theirs. So when we're talking about refusing things, it's important that think of it not as you're refusing your friends or flat out, but you're refusing to damage your brain and body. Be firm and offer other ideas to vaping if you have to, or or just leave if it comes down to that either you vape or you have to leave that situation. Some excuses you might want to be able to try, or some, I guess, just handy refusal tips to have in your back pocket, or things like, no way, I have to drive. Yeah, right, my mom would kill me if she ever found out. This was one that I used a lot because I did have a mom that would definitely be very much disappointed in me, to say the least, if she ever caught me vaping. Sorry, I'm just not into it, or no, why are you messing with that stuff? So being able to kind of offer other ideas for vaping. So if everyone's hanging around vaping and they ask you to vape, you can always just say, no, I'm not really into that sort of thing, but why don't we, go play video games instead, or come up with something else to do in that situation. And also, if you or someone you know is using e-cigarettes actively, the sooner you quit, the better. Here are some things that can make a big impact on that quit journey. Asking for help isn't weak, it's a smart move. So if you feel comfortable, talk to friends or adults you trust about wanting to quit. Getting support from important people in your life can really make a big difference. Remember, it's normal for people to slip up when they're trying to quit. And if you do slip up, don't think of it as a failure. It just means you might want to try quitting in a different way. Being prepared increases your chances of quitting successfully. So make a plan, stick to it, and keep trying to quit until you get it down. Your health is worth the effort. And then the next few slides, I have a couple of different resources for you to consider on this quitting journey. So the first one is a program that was developed by the Truth Initiative. So anyone can text on their phone 88709 to be connected to another person that will instantly start talking to them and asking them questions about their use. Are they ready to quit? What does that quitting journey look like? They'll also check in with them and make sure that they're still staying on track from time to time. Here are some testimonials or some things that other people have said about this program. So we have some teenagers that are saying that they're cool. They make me feel as if I'm not alone in this journey. They make it seem like there's a way out of addiction. It expresses the emotions of quitting from other people. They're the only thing rooting for me to quit. They're not super in your face. They serve as a quick, hey, don't you think don't do the thing you're thinking about right now. They encourage me not to juul. They offer alternatives when I get a craving. I started going to the gym and working out instead of juuling. And they remind me there's no room to turn back to something harmful. So again, these are all just some really powerful statements that were put forward by people that have used this platform. And again, that's texting Ditch Juul to 88709. We also have this website available to us called becomeanx.org. This was developed in collaboration between the Truth Initiative and the Mayo Clinic. Become an X has helped keep more than 800,000 people on their quitting journey. And research has shown that following the Become an X quit plan can quadruple a tobacco user's chance of quitting. So typically when someone tries to quit using e-cigarettes, that can take anywhere from 9 to 16 times to start to actually be successful at that. So starting somewhere where you know you're gonna have success can really help set you up for a good result in that quitting journey. So again, research shows that the following becoming an X quit plan can quadruple a tobacco user's chance of quitting. So following something like this can definitely help get you to where you need to go. We also have here teen.smokefree.gov. So they're going to have a lot of different options for you. They have smoke-free text for teens. It's going to be similar to that quit line that we talked about from the Truth Initiative. They also have an app for people that like to have an app for things. You can also chat with an expert either by calling them directly or chat. They have a chat function on their website. They'll help you to build a vaping plan or a quit vaping plan. And then also you can always follow them on Instagram if you're interested in following them on social media before you commit to going with them. But they have a lot of different articles on how to build that vaping quit plan, what to expect your first day without vaping. They have tips and tricks for how to deal with vape cravings and understanding your vaping triggers. They'll really go in depth into vaping addiction and withdrawal and what that typically looks like from person to person. They talk about anxiety and stress in vaping and how vaping can kind of increase that anxiety and stress and how we can manage anxiety and stress in more healthy ways. And then also they'll discuss depression and vaping. So there are a lot of people that are, maybe they're vaping because they're feeling depressed, and they're definitely likely to start feeling depressed when they stop vaping because they've gotten that chemical out of their brain. But once you get through that kind of that fog, you'll start to feel better, and they have those articles that will explain what that looks like for people. And then lastly, it's important for you to do your own research. So you now have sat with me on this call for about 40 minutes, but I would encourage you to take a look at some credible resources and definitely do some fact checks. Don't just believe your friends when they say that this device is safe for you, because they don't always know, they don't always have the right information, and they're not always trying to get you to do the right thing, right? Our friends are rarely pressuring us to eat our vegetables. So again, make sure you're doing your own research to make sure that what these devices have in them are actually healthy for you. And to kind of take a look at some of those, I have some of them queued up. So jtn.org, teens.drugabuse.gov, truthinitiative.org, and cdc.gov, and then even above the influence.com. So I wanted to kind of take a second to do a news share and show you guys what I'm talking about. So this is the website for jtn.org, which is the organization that I work for. And in here you can find, under the research tab here, you can find some drug information. I'm just going to click that and go to the generic page. But then we also have a whole page on vaping and e-cigarettes, as well as any other type of thing you might be interested in getting some more information on. And here we have just kind of a pamphlet for parents, but also an e-cigarette and vaping card that talks about just the facts on vaping and e-cigarettes. A lot of other things that we covered here, but in just kind of a condensed little card. We also talk about marijuana and vaping and how that can be harmful for your health as well. The next one we discussed briefly in our slide was teens.drugabuse.gov. So this is a really great resource for teenagers and just anyone really, because the articles that are here are written in a way that's not overly sciencey. When you go to the National Institute of Drug Abuse website, it's on its own. It can be very dense and difficult to read, but these articles are very approachable. And again, you can see as we scroll through, they have articles on all kinds of different drugs, so you can get some information about what is harmful for you and how things are going to affect your brain and your body. So if we take a look at the tobacco and e-cigarettes, again, just give some more in-depth information about what are these products, how are they used, and other things that you can expand upon, like what are the government regulations, what happens to your body, can someone die if they use too much nicotine, just kind of things like that. I would encourage you to go take a look at. The next one we have is the Truth Initiative. So we've seen a couple of videos from the Truth Initiative in our presentation today. But one thing that I want to point out here is they have a lot of tools for how to quit smoking and quit vaping. Two of those that we talked about already. So we have becomeanx.org. This is where, becomeanx.org. You can click here to sign up for that. And then it gives you just kind of some more information about the X program. And then there's also more information about that This Is Quitting text line that we talked about. So if we go to This Is Quitting, it'll kind of just talk about what exactly is it, how does it work. Again, it works by just texting digital to 88709. And then you'll immediately get connected with somebody that can kind of start to talk to you about what that quitting journey looks like and how to set up that plan. And then we have here the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. So right now, obviously the front page is going to have a lot of stuff on coronavirus because that's what's topical. But if we type in vaping and see what comes up, we have here this first one, an outbreak of lung injury associated with the use of e-cigarette or vaping products. So this will give you some more information about that, as well as the latest information about e-cigarettes. So let's maybe back out a little bit and talk about what e-cigarettes are. So if you wanted to get some more information or share that with some of your friends. And then the last one I thought was interesting is called abovetheinfluence.com. So they have information just on generic, just drugs and how to say no to drugs and be yourself. But, you know, I thought it was just interesting because they have articles on like, what does it mean to live above the influence, above the influence of drugs? And then also they have articles on different types of influence, whether it's friends and peers. So, you know, how to be your own person and live above that crowd. And then they have really great advice. So I love this one here at the end of this article. It says, hang out with people who support you and be careful of people who are all about negativity. And then they have, you know, articles on stress, how to live above stress and how to handle it in a way that's healthy and things like that. So definitely do your own research, check things out, make sure that you are getting good information and quality information, things that is true, because you don't want to just listen to your friends and then find yourself in a situation where you are addicted to these substances. And then with that, we'll wrap it up. Again, my name is Brittany Wheely, and I'm the Youth and Community Outreach Specialist for Join Together Northern Nevada. Don't forget to take the short quiz that comes at the end of this session. It's only about 10 questions, but make sure that you complete that in order to get credit for participating in this course today. So with that, I thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of your day and that you are able to make more informed decisions when it comes to e-cigarette use and what that looks like for you.